How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the Podcast Island, episode number 7. I am your host, Trinity Collins. With me is my guest, Southern Connecticut State University graduate Darryl Hall. This podcast can only be viewed on YouTube, and selected clips will be posted on the One Man Island Productions Instagram account. Thank you again ahead of time for listening to this podcast. I hope you guys enjoyed the show. Darryl Hall, how you doing?
I'm doing good, Trinity. How we doing, brother man?
I am doing fantastic. So, today's topic is about Quentin Tarantino's viewpoints on Hollywood movies today, particularly Marvel movies. And so I'm going to read you a quote that he made on November 2022. Now, many articles have posted his comments, so this one is from the Variety.com. And the full quote says, and I quote from Quentin Tarantino, "Part of the Marvel-ization of Hollywood is you have all these actors who have become famous playing these characters, but they're not movie stars. Captain America is a star, or Thor is a star." I mean, I'm not the first person to say that. I think that it's been said a zillion times, but it's like, it's these franchise characters that become a star. So, with me saying that, what's your opinion on that?
That's an interesting quote, and it can go many ways. And I think we explained on the podcast many years, and even in the recent ones, of both of our history when it comes to film. That's what we both went to school for. Quentin's not wrong. In certain aspects, he's not wrong. Sometimes those things are what help, as you and I both know, with storytelling. Sometimes the easiest way to reach a broader audience or get everyone's attention is the novelty. We use those things that we find in comfort, so we may find the small things that we know. So maybe we see that one character, okay, maybe I could go watch the rest of this movie to find out about certain series. And sometimes we could all be victims to that. Maybe sometimes it's out of ignorance, and I mean the purest form of it, of like, you just don't know. This may be the only thing that you do know and relate to that. So he's not wrong, and then on a deeper sense, it could go even more to the person playing said character, like who's behind Iron Man or Robert Downey Jr. People may not know Iron Man in the Marvel series, but they're going to know, I know him, so let me see what this movie's about in the character. Another perfect example, I don't know if I want to jump the gun, but Black Panther. A lot of people knew Chadwick Boseman for playing these famous characters in other movies before, and a lot of prominent people in real life when he's telling those biographies. So when we see him in Black Panther, some of us might not have known about Black Panther or that side of Marvel, but we're like, hey, I know Chadwick. I know some of the other people who are characters in this movie. Let me go see it. So he's not.
It's funny you say that, because Samuel Jackson responded to Quentin Tarantino's comments a few days after the fact, and he did in fact mention Chadwick Boseman. So I'm gonna read you this quote. This is paraphrasing here. He says, "It takes an actor to be those particular characters. And the sign of movie stardom has always been what puts asses in seats. What are we talking about? That's not a big controversy for me to know that these actors are movie stars. Chadwick Boseman is Black Panther. You can't refute that, and he's a movie star." End quote. And for me, I agree with them that we do go to these movies to see, like, Avengers, Infinity War, Captain America, Iron Man, Spider-Man. I mean, those were already names in the literary text context. And now the fact that we had the technology to make those live action, it makes it easier for us to love those characters, because we're seeing elite actors play those characters. But yes, we do go and see those characters, like Spider-Man, more than we see Tom Holland or Tobey Maguire or Andrew Garfield.
Mm-hmm.
But in the same breath, here's what I can also say. Without Marvel, will we know a lot of these actors? Because think about this now. Before Robert Downey Jr. became Iron Man, he was in constant. His career was floundering. He was in the news constantly for all the wrong reasons. And,
Absolutely.
And Jon Favreau and Kevin Feige took a gamble on him, and guess what? He made more money in Spider-Man: Homecoming than Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm.
Think about that now. You made more money than the main character. That's how big he became. And then he got roles in Sherlock Holmes, and a variety of other films. Tom Holland was an unknown actor, and now he's in Uncharted. He was in a Russo's movie about recently. I think there was another film. I think the guy who plays Thor, Chris Hemsworth, he was a good actor. He was known, but he didn't become famous without Thor. So in a way, because what Quentin Tarantino is saying is that back then, let's say back in like the 80s or 90s, there wasn't as much literary text characters that was famous in literary text that became, or video game context, that went on to be on the big screen. So now you had to create your own story, and because those characters are only limited to the big screen to a particular actor, you can only see that the actor made the movie rather than the movie made the actor, or the actor made the character rather than the character made the actor. And I also did a little research. I'm gonna turn over to you because I want you to hear this.
Gotcha.
So this came off the top of my head because I just recently I kind of like skimmed through a Power Rangers movie that happened about a few years ago, and I realized something. The Avengers, the Justice League, Batman, Spider-Man, Power Rangers, any profile movie. So Jackie Robinson, let's see, Bohemian Rhapsody,
James Brown,
Whitney Houston. I'm sure there's more. I can't think of right now. I'm sure there's more out there. Then you have the Super Mario Bros, Sonic, Jurassic Park. These were either video games, real people, or literary characters that went on the big screen. So now you have actors playing them, and now, yes, we are going to see those characters, but in the same breath, we want certain actors to play them because we want to be able to live out what we've already seen. So when you hear me read those lists, what does that tell you?
Those are all things I could reach to in my past that, as you said, I knew about those stories from other areas.
Right.
So those characters and those stories may make the movie, but we find out more by doing it. I wanted to go back to a point you said before because when we brought this up, I thought of Spider-Man. And all three, I was going to say, you took Tom Holland, but all three of the actors, if you think about it, what movies did we know any of them from before?
Exactly.
And especially with Tobey, because that's the one you and I probably grew up on. This is Spider-Man we knew. And Tom, a little bit after that. But the point I was making with that one was they wouldn't have been themselves without that, and that helped gain them other things. So much so that in the last Spider-Man movie, they found a way to use that novelty and those characters that made those stories good and attached everybody to it and try to put them all in the same universe, and also capture our attention by doing it. So it's on the hits of novelty, and it kind of added to a little bit of pop culture because we know they took a picture with a meme out there from the episode in the cartoons of the 3 different Spider-Man. So they were trying to hit all the areas to capture our attention. I don't think that it's necessarily wrong, but I think that they're adapting to the times. They're trying to find ways to spark people's interest in movies because things have changed so much. I know you want to speak about that as well, so I'm not going to jump to them too much, but I just feel like they're trying to find that medium. So I don't see it as wrong necessarily when it comes to that. And we're speaking about all those things. And to answer the other question of when I think about those titles, like I said, it's just from being familiar with them. I don't want to say the other word wrong that I was trying to use, but that comfort. That was the other thing I was going to point out too as well. We see these characters, we feel comfortable in. Mario's been around for how long? Mario and Luigi.
Forever. They have like 20 different kind of video games out there.
Right.
I think they have a TV series out there. That probably was short lived.
And I'm pretty sure there's many movies we aren't thinking about that might have been made before.
The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Yep. That's another great one. But there's so many things like that where they come from those areas and turn into other things. I'm pretty sure, haven't they done a Street Fighter movie?
I would be shocked if they did.
Yeah,
I mean, no, here's the thing. They actually did a Dragon Ball Evolution movie a way back ways. Wasn't popular.
I remember when they came out with it.
But here's the thing. Shang-Chi is a Kung Fu Asian movie. And I was watching that movie, I was like, they have no excuse to not do a Dragon Ball Z movie. They have no excuse now. Because I just saw that I was like, there's no way you can't make the attempt or do an Avatar movie like the last Airbender film.
And we named so many, but there's one franchise I can say for sure because I grew up on that one that I know came from cartoons. That came huge. And because the director, the actor they put in it, and the character from that, all three, you guess which one I'm talking about or no? And you know it.
I think I do, but I just, on the spot, I can't.
So, we have a teacher named after the director. This will give it right
Oh,
away.
Michael Bay? Transformers.
Oh,
Oh, yeah, that's true. That did happen.
And I'm like, that's probably one of the greatest examples of that. The cartoon came first and the toy line. Before any of those movies came out, there were other movies and DVDs. Obviously, I was a huge fan growing up. But think about how big that became and where that came from. By the time they came out to the movie, how long Transformers had been out. And all of us then went to go see all of these movies because we grew up on these characters. You know?
I'm going to read to you because I went back to the last 5 years. I'm excluding 2020 because that was a pandemic year. Mm-hmm. I went back to the last 5 years.
Red shirt year.
Yeah. It was the 10 highest grossing movies. I'm talking about like in theater. You go to the theater, you pay your popcorn, pay your money, all that stuff to watch the movie. The last 5 years, first going to tell you the year. I'm going to tell you the amount of original concepts. So I'm excluding cartoon, video game, literary text, all that stuff. It has to be an original, only movie, limited to only a film creation. And so, starting in 2017, there were 5 original movie concepts and 5 that weren't. In 2018, there were 3 original movie concepts and 7 that weren't. 2019, and this was the year that had Endgame, Lion King, Spider-Man Far From Home, Captain Marvel, Star Wars, Joker. This one had 4 original concepts and 6 that weren't. In 2021, 4 original, 6 weren't. And this past year, 4 original and 6 weren't. And this is across the entire world. This is not just limited to the United States. So 4 original concepts, and so pretty much outside of 2017, every year, 6 movies are projected to be in the top 10 highest grossing that have either been a popular video game, a popular book, a popular comic book. I think I already said that. Whatever. It's already been made, and then they're just remaking it. That's just the trend nowadays, and that's because, like you said, everybody's money is green, and sometimes when you have, because Quentin Tarantino is an excellent filmmaker. Like, that guy has an eye for literally anything, and does a movie like Django reach an entire population? No. But does a Marvel movie that can reach could reach more demographics? Yeah. Does a movie starring a female lead in a Marvel movie attract more eyes? Yeah, definitely. I mean, think about it. Black Panther was I think was right behind Infinity War that year as far as the highest grossing movie when it came out, because think about it, there were maybe a decent amount of black people that went to see Marvel movies, but once you went Black Panther in it, you definitely smashed that demographic.
And they only jumped it because of that, because they put it out right after. I remember now, Infinity War came out a few months after. Black Panther was the lead into that one.
Yes.
And that's what I think added on and helped to the story, because now all of us that saw Black Panther, well, let me go watch this. Well, now that I watched this, what are we going to do if we never seen all the movies from before Black Panther? Well, we'll watch them. So now, like you said, everybody's money's green, right? Now we're going to go pay to go put in the price to watch these movies to kind of, learn the story if it's something that we become interested in.
And here's a little story. I remember it was a month before the movie came out.
Yeah.
Because it came out during February. So I know I was on the phone with my mother about 3 weeks before the first weekend release. She asked me, she told me, like, I hope the movie's good. And I told her, okay, Mom, there's this movie coming out after Black Panther called Infinity War. It's one of the 2 most important Marvel films that they're going to have in the entire business life. All right? There's no way they're going to mess this up. If they mess this up, it's going to affect Infinity War. It's going to affect a lot of other things. And plus, they want the Black money too. Okay.
Exactly.
So I want to ask you this question because I only am asking this question. Wait, you want to ask a question, or are you just thinking?
I got a question.
Go ahead.
A question for you, but it goes along with a statement.
Go ahead.
Out of all those originals movie, I think I can name 2 of the original concepts. And you said top 10? Because
Top 10.
It's connected to one person, Jordan Peele. Are both of his original concepts from 2018 or 27? Whenever Us came out and
Get Out.
First one. Get Out. Yes. Are those 2 the original or no on that list?
You know, let me look. I haven't looked at it in a while. I don't think it was. I think
That's not original concepts though.
No, it was original concept. But I just don't think it cracked the top 10 highest grossing movies.
Got you.
But I did see that film, and that was,
Because that's what came to mind as soon as you said
that movie messed me up when it comes to how I perceive white girls. I was like, man, I don't know if I can trust you now.
That's a whole nother topic for another podcast.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, but no, I did not make the top 10. But yes, that is an original concept, which I do believe if I made a list strictly of the highest grossing movies that are original concepts, I would like to think that movie will at least be 10.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, you see how small it may be in the world that I could sit here and figure out a few films that I know had original concepts because, like you said, so many other things they're bringing back the nostalgia of, so it's hard. Another one in there that got skipped was Toy Story, number 4.
Toy Story is an original concept, and it is in there.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And speaking of Toy Story, well, here's the thing. When I was younger, I want to say at the age of maybe 8 or 9, me and my family, we would always in the summer drive down to Virginia because my sister was living in Virginia at the time. We always go visit her. So at the time, I didn't have any streaming sites. I didn't have anything. All I had was a DVD player. So we had DVDs. So I always pack about 10 DVD movies that I think, okay, I'm going to watch this over and over again, even if I get bored with them.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, I wasn't thinking about, who's in this film or who was in this particular comedy movie. All I wanted was a good story that would make me laugh, cry, feel some kind of emotion. And today, I still think the same way. I just want to make sure, whenever I'm watching a film, I want to make sure that the director and the actors tell a great story. So, if I see Denzel Washington if I'm going through Netflix, if I see Denzel Washington on there, am I going to click? Probably. But then again, I'm probably going to look at what the story is because I have to get invested in the topics, in the conversation, in the philosophy of what's being told.
Mm-hmm.
So do you think that maybe our generation just focuses more on the story and the characters rather than just the actors? Because look, the actor's job is to play a character in order to tell a story. And do you think we just want to see really cool actors be charismatic or be bad guys or good guys or just in between?
In between, I would say. The only reason why is because, for us, it would be in between because we know both sides of it. Because I've seen, and this is why it's good to give great roles to those type of actors like Denzel, because then they take and create great opportunities to go create their own stories that we may not know and go look at them. So I would say somewhere in between. We want to see them in great roles. There's times where it works, and it's times where it doesn't work. Like Denzel himself, like if we're going to break him down, I'll use him as an example. He's played a lot of great roles and told a lot of great stories of heroes and villains based on real people or just playing them in general.
What actor you talking about again? You talking about Denzel?
Denzel Washington. Yes.
Yeah, like because he played Alonzo in Training Day. That was a bad guy.
Based on a real person, yes.
Yeah.
He also played Frank Lucas, which is people are going to view Frank Lucas how they want. You know what I mean? Of a bad guy or a good guy because he was a drug dealer to tell that story. But in both those roles, what I was going to point out about Denzel will always be Denzel. He's going to say things his way with his accent, and he's going to try his best, but you're always going to know it's him. But no matter what, we'll always go to watch to see those characters. We never turn away. And he's taken it and put people on the smaller roles and other things because he's acting in everything up to Macbeth, which people forget. But he's become that great of it that he can do that. But think about the other people that may not watch stuff like that. Now, they'll go watch Denzel, but maybe they'll get into that story because of what they saw from that actor and how great the performance was, which is why I said in between, because it can go either way. If you know the story, you just hope that the actor portrays it.
Right.
I feel like more people are going to look towards the actor being in that movie, because if you know the story from the other side, like if it existed in a book or something, I feel like they're always going to look at it with a slighted eye. And more people than not that I know, like Twilight was a series like that I watched with a couple of exes and found out the story and found out that they had books the same way with Harry Potter. That's another good example.
And Game of Thrones.
Exactly. People, we know because we helped create these, so we, which I try to explain to my friends, like, y'all got to get over the fact that the movie not going to be the same as the book. You can't put all of that in the movie.
Exactly.
So it's like, trying to explain that, but that's why I always say people lean more towards the actors than that. Because most of those hardcore fans that I know, they'll watch it, but more than likely they're going to be disappointed. They left this out, they left that on. I'm like, well, one, they got to shoot a movie, everything's not going to fit. And you know that I know, giving people the secrets away, you're trying to write a script page to have dialogue and certain things, which is only supposed to last a minute each page. So if that book was about 1,000 pages, you want to count how many minutes we gonna have to exactly? And you understand? Yeah, you shake your head because you
at that point, it might as well be a TV series.
Exactly. There's no point in this. You know how you gonna sit for that long? And that's the main thing people gotta remember. Like, you're thinking about you. Nobody's gonna sit for that long.
Right.
People are gonna get tired. Titanic, they split it up and had a intermission in between the full movie in the theater at the time.
Really? I didn't know that.
Oh, you didn't know?
I didn't know that.
I went to go see it when it probably came out when I was like 4 or 5, but they dragged us to go see it. I don't know why. But when you're in there, I forget how long the movie actually is, timing-wise, but they split it in the middle, and then they went from there. They had an intermission.
Sorry, technical difficulties. The last time I heard you talking, it was you were talking about they split the movie in between.
Oh, yes. So they had an intermission whenever the half point was in the movie for people to come out, get themselves together. Like, you know how they do at a theater show. Same thing. Let you go get something to eat, something to drink, use the bathroom, and then go back because the movie was that long. So in that aspect, I was saying, you're going to make it exactly like the book. Do you know how many times y'all going to have to get up? Like you said, we're going to make this a TV series, or we're going to split this book into like 3-4 different parts.
Yeah.
Because nobody can sit for more than probably like an hour, 20 hours and a half.
Unless it's really engaging.
Yes. But sometimes they could do too much. Like, what movie did I do that to? It was DC's Batman versus Superman, which was super long. I fell asleep in the middle of the movie and woke up and still had like an hour left.
Oh my gosh.
I went to go see it. It was that long. I forget how. I got to look up the time of how long Batman vs. Superman was. This is the one that came out a few years back.
I didn't see it in theaters because I didn't see it in theaters because I felt like they got to the point too fast. I just wasn't invested in that particular Batman's character. And you're going to try for me to fall in love with the character while he's trying to fight off Superman. We don't even know why exactly makes this Batman tick. It's just too many cooks in the kitchen, too many plot lines, too many storylines. Here's what I do say. There are parts of it that I like as far as certain scenes, like Batman working out is always an awesome thing to watch. Mm-hmm. The way Zack Snyder shot it was his own style, and I'm not saying that it's bad. I'm saying like the structure of the movie, the plot lines, the fact that you rushed it too quickly, because I'm pretty sure Captain America: Civil War came out at the same time, so they're trying to compete with Marvel. Yep. I've always said this: stop. I understand you want to compete with Marvel, but you can't copy the originators. Besides, what they did was just impossible. You had to do your own thing.
And they sped it up because they really wanted to. What they really were pushing with that one was challenging. We're going to challenge the Avengers because they were trying to push, which they sped up in the story. I fell asleep and still was able to catch them throwing the Justice League at the end in there.
Yeah, they did.
My problem was like, y'all, they kind of the way, and that's why I fell asleep, because the storyline got disinteresting at a point, because it's like, this is just unnecessary dialogue, but y'all also just doing too much with the story of jumping parts, speeding it up, and confused me because I didn't know what was it, Metropolis and Gotham were that close to each other as well. They put them like right across the river, like New York, New Jersey in the movie. Yep.
I don't even know where Metropolis is on the map anyway.
I can't remember, but I'm like, I never knew they were this close to each other. Like, they did a lot of things that were, you have to do it for the sake of a movie, but
I always thought, because this is a side discussion, but I've always felt that Gotham was in New York because I think one of the nicknames of New York is Gotham. That's just how I always felt about it.
Right, but they were like literally across the river from each other.
I was like,
that's why I was like, doesn't make any sense. Yeah.
Yeah, because like, well, if you knew, how the hell did you not? You're superhearing. How did you not know about Batman's doings? It just, yeah.
Right, and like we said, they sped it up to the end where now you see members of the Justice League, and I'm like, all right, what are y'all trying to like? Now we see what y'all doing here, but this just, it's like you said, it's all over the place. So it's like it's rushed to where you can't get a full idea out. Where Avengers, they have been working on that from Iron Man for a while. They built that story up, and all the other movies in between, the Hornet, the Wasp. You get what I'm saying? It's Ant-Man. There's so many other movies that people forget are there that are, you know what I'm saying? Doctor Strange. We can go down a list of ones that build that story throughout the years, where they still tell it, have the same continuity throughout all of the separate movies like Black Panther and all of that. So,
you know what I was thinking about? I'm not saying that Quentin Tarantino's movies don't do well, but I think one of the reasons why maybe we talk about more about Marvel movies than anything else is because there's a sense of current with them. There's a sense that these films take place and are represented in maybe the era of what we're going through right now. Because with Quentin Tarantino, their films are more based off the 80s, 90s, or anything.
We still had the opportunity to learn that type of storytelling. Technology has advanced so much, even in our short lifetime, that it's kind of hard to make it that way, on top of a lot of other political and different reasons as to why those parts of history aren't being told to the kids at such a young age. We can relate to those things because we knew about certain of the things. Like, we know this is a time period piece, but we also understand this happened during slavery. This is an old Western, but it's in the 1800s, which is really still, that's the South, that's Texas.
Right.
You know what I mean? We figured that out, but from knowing our history and stories we knew before. Like you said, we knew the actors, and then we also know Quentin Tarantino.
Right.
That's, like you said, that's just one of his favorite things to do, is to tell time period pieces and tell these stories. You know what I'm saying? So it's like we understand those concepts of it, where I don't know if these kids have the attention span, or, like you said, things like that to pay attention to.
Okay, here's an example. I just Googled this. The Hateful Eight. My father has tried to get me to watch it. Now, I've tried to watch it like 5 times, and I'm not saying it's bad, but I just like, I don't know why. It always puts me to sleep. I don't know why. And I want to watch it. I really want to keep my eyes open. For some reason, I always wake up and it's the end of the movie. Mm-hmm. And maybe that's what I'm talking about. Maybe like the disconnect from my generation, or what I perceive as engaging storytelling, or engaging background settings, tones, dialogue. Maybe that was a disconnect. Maybe just the pacing of the movie just wasn't for me. Because I always like a good action to start the movie rather than just, slow pacing. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm saying like maybe that's the reason why I had a little disconnect, because Jackie Robinson, let's use his film as an example. Baseball, still popular today. Not as popular as it was during his time, but still popular. The discussion of African Americans in sports, that's still it's still a modern issue. Mm-hmm. Maybe the Hateful Eight, maybe their story is more a time period that you had to try to dissect a little bit more, which not everybody is going to understand or is willing to do.
Right. Jackie's story is more relatable. That's a story that's told every year because of based on what he was doing, helping to break the color barrier in baseball at the time. So that's where it becomes more relatable. And like you said, even though that's a time period piece too, we could all relate to that story on many different levels. And the way that they told that storytelling and concept was a little bit different,
So I'm going to ask final 2 questions. And
yes,
one question is going to be, say if you were a director and you were asked to do a film about a already famous, video game, book, television show, video game, whatever. Would you be up for it, or would you be like, I want to create my own stories?
In my mind right now, I would say I would. It depends on what the story is. That's where I will be careful of This is a story I know I can tell and not feel like I'm gonna mess this up. Because if I'm a fan and I know what was preceded before me, like if anybody, we don't know, like 50, 80 years down the line, somebody might remake Black Panther again. But if you know how great the first one was, what are you going to do to try and do your best? Because you don't want to mess it up, but you also don't want to miss the opportunity to tell your version of the story or paint the picture through your eyes of how you want the rest of the world to see it.
It's funny you say that because I don't know how much truth this was, but I did see a few articles or pictures online where there was talks of them doing a television series on Wakanda, pretty much like the origins of Wakanda, pretty much like the very first Black Panther.
Right.
And so I'm thinking, like, you know, I can totally see Darryl doing something like this, you know, telling because Wakanda, people don't remember about the story about the Black Panther is that it was the battle between tradition and what Wakanda could be as far as expanding and moving away from a very stagnant, rigid, stoic, traditional methods.
Right.
And so I feel like telling that story from a very stoic and traditional methods could be a great take in knowing the difference between Chadwick Boseman's Black Panther and this Black Panther.
Very true. And they got to go back to the beginning of the roots, which was kind of touched on in the movie, which I will bring those parts back up too, of like, you know, Chadwick Boseman's character is Black Panther for our time period, but remember how the story was told for people who didn't see the Avengers before that. He became Black Panther because T'Chaka, his father, got murdered.
Yes.
So you still have to tell that part of the story with him and his uncle.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And Chadwick T'Challa's uncle, of what they were doing at the time, because that's where the story starts. But even in the movie, they kind of tried to root that in American history and how the world worked and try to relate it to the topics. So, of course, like you said, I would love to tell that story to see. But then for me, I just probably go back to the comic books, too. You got to refer to that to see how that story was told as well. So,
for me, I would, unless it's the Incredible Hulk, I'm going to say no. Because I like Black Panther, but there's one character that I felt so attached to, and that was the Incredible Hulk. When I read, because I bought 2 of his comics, and when I read them, I feel like I understand what he's going through. Like, I felt a connection towards him. So I feel like if someone asked me, could you do a trilogy of an animated or a live action Hulk, I was like, I would give it a shot. But the reason I would say no if it was any of our characters, because it doesn't have to be Marvel. It could be Harry Potter or Jurassic Park or anything. I would say no because fans are very, very snippy.
And fickle.
Yes. They want the movie to be shot for shot a live action version of the book. And you have to understand that when a lot of these books or a lot of these comics or a lot of these video games were made at certain points in history where there's things that you can get away with and things you can't get away with. There's certain dialogue, there's certain, you know, gender roles or things that was just commonplace back then that you can't do. I'm pretty sure I remember because I was watching a retrospective of the Fantastic Four, and I think this one guy read a line in the book where it says, "Wives are for kissing, not talking." I was like, you can't say that nowadays.
No, absolutely
no.
not.
I was like, again, I would love to do a shot-for-shot remake, but that would be my film. That'd be just, if you want to see a shot-for-shot remake, you might as well just read the comic.
Very true.
You have to, in a way, modernize it and tell a story that you can see, that you can tell, that you can get yourself invested, that creates the passion, while also staying true to the traditions and what made the characters great in the first place upon their very first issue, which is very hard, which is the reason I don't want to do it. Because I feel comfortable knowing that I created a character based off what I saw, based off what I saw from a movie or hanging out with my friends. It's way easier because at least when you criticize this character, you can't compare it to anything else because you can only compare it to what I was perceiving.
Right. But they say that. But when they take these chances on a lot of movies we're talking about, sometimes there are new directors. Ryan Coogler is one of them, but he got his opportunity because he did a story over it that he had to kind of retell but add a new part to it with Creed.
Yeah.
So it's like, how do you find that? It's finding that medium, which is like, that's why I said I would do it. Because it's hard to do that, but you want to put your spin on it. But stay within those boundaries of where do you find the
Right.
balance. Sometimes, I guess from used to having happening in life, like, sometimes you got to be the one to go out and, like, go over the hill, get the arrows, and come back like, hey, wait a minute, you know what I mean? Let's take our time with it. But, somebody has to do it. So there are the few who will take that risk and try.
So my final question is, because there is a theory that superhero movies are going to die off sooner or later. And hey, look, there was a time when cowboy movies dominated the market. There was a time where science fiction movies, I'm talking about Star Trek and Star Wars, dominated the market. I think crime movies dominated the market. Crime shows. I mean, horror movies dominated the market. I mean, each decade and different mediums, whether it's television and movies, a certain genre dominated the market for like 5 or 10 years, and then another one would dominate. And I think sooner or later, video games movies are going to dominate the market. You don't get a lot of Mario Brothers, a lot of Sonic, Pikachu, Uncharted, Mortal Kombat, Street Fighter, maybe anime films. There will be live action too. There might be a change to guard. So the question I'm going to ask you is, will there be a time where we're going to see a Denzel movie, or we're going to see a Leonardo DiCaprio movie, where we're going to see a movie because of the actor first, rather than the character they're playing? Do you think that's going to change anytime soon, or do you think we're going to stay with we're going to see the Pikachu movie, or we're going to see a Sonic or Black Panther movie?
It will go back, and it kind of does in certain aspects still. Everything has changed with technology and how we view it and how we go about it, and there's so many new streams and avenues that even those people can take their own lane in their own hands and go off. But there will be a time where it'll come back. I don't know if the big theater thing will ever be that anymore, but for me, as long as there's always, our lives are all stories. As long as there's always a protagonist and antagonist.
Right.
Some points between where life, like how life goes up and down and up and down. How you tell the story to make it dramatic and make people feel. As long as we can always get a feeling from it, and there's always someone that can portray it good, and they take their name to go with it, there will always be an opportunity. How the lanes may change is what I'm seeing now, like we said earlier, of like how life and technology has changed so much. But there's always a life story, and on the other end of that, there's always people escaping their own lives to go watch this story. Either you want to make yourself feel good because you want to feel better than that person, or you're going to attach to them because you know what they're going through, or they can make you escape what you're going through or feel like they're helping you. Or you can look up to something up there, whether it be superhero movies. They may die down, but in each of the categories you named of what took over, there was always somebody positive. There was always somebody going against them. I wouldn't even call them negative, just going against them, because people fall in love with that too.
Yeah, you need conflict, and it doesn't always have to be man versus man, woman versus woman, man versus animal, or robot versus animal, or
it doesn't even have to be. I was gonna say it doesn't even have to be people.
No, it could just be a man, or it could be a man fighting himself. Fighting his inner demons. There has to be a conflict that the protagonist has to overcome. And sometimes I always said this: if I see 10 movies, one of them has to be the antagonist wins. There has to be one chink in the armor, or one movie that's like, oh, they went in this direction. Because, hey, look, just like how us black folks know that the system won't always go in our favor, there is going to be a time where you're going to see a protagonist lose. And that's a story to tell, where it's like, the heroes don't always win.
But that's real life. There's people who you want to see that will do great and good and go. And they'll be doing good for themselves, but real life is like, it doesn't always end that way. Like you said, it happens. They gotta lose. But sometimes for a series to live, you gotta have them lose, so the next time they come up, it could be a better feeling of winning, because that's like real life. You're gonna go back down, but you're gonna find your way back up like an underdog. Yeah,
it's like professional sports. Even though they're competing against each other, there's always going to be a fight, and everybody's going to get riled up over it. It happened in the 70s and 80s. It's going to happen nowadays. People love to see when athletes fight each other for real, instead of just competing each other. Because you have drunk fans. It's going to get even more crazy.
Giannis kind of said that in his press conference.
Yes, he did say that.
It's the same idea of like, these are steps to success. It may not always, you may view it as a failure. You go to watch the movie, it could be that people view it as a failure. Some people be like, this person needed to go through this downtime for them to get to where they got to be positivity.
The hero's journey. The hero's journey.
Exactly. There's always it has to be a journey. Where does the story come from if there's not a journey? Which is argue with my friends all the time about that. Like, they're trying to argue points in the movie. If this movie went the way we wanted to, it would be 10 minutes.
Yeah, and you know what else? Here's the last thing before I end this is that I've always said this. It's very hard to create a new plot because a lot of plots have just been rehashed. But it's how you construct it, maybe add a little flavor into it, change out the characters, the demographics. Maybe it's a woman, maybe it's a older woman. It could be a man, a black man, or it could be anything. And you change the philosophy and the culture and certain meanings behind it. You can create a fresher movie because a lot of movies are very the same. It's just how you structure it and the flavor in it. It's like ice cream. It's all ice cream, just different flavors.
I was gonna say this is my last one. I'll say to you too, and kind of quote for that same point right there: ice cream, different flavors. It shows you how really, really, and a greater concept of things, how small the world is, and how we're all much more alike than people think.
Right.
As you said, the stories are always similar. Of course, we're gonna have unique details based upon who we are, culture, all those things, right? But it shows you how much more alike than we are not when it comes down to a lot of things. And that's the one thing I'll leave it with. Like, things look similar because the world is much smaller than we make it.
Thank you to all for listening to the Podcast Island episode number 7. I am your host, Trinity Collins. I want to thank you ahead of time, Darryl Hall, for joining me on this. Darryl Hall is a Southern Connecticut State University graduate. This podcast can only be viewed on YouTube, and selected clips will be posted on the One Man Island Productions Instagram account. Thank you all for listening, and I hope you guys enjoy the future.
Peace.